Sometimes I get annoyed with myself because I will go to Home Depot, I'll get a bunch of wood, I'll start working on a project. One of my favorite things to do is get a bunch of wood and build something. No matter what it is, I just love the entire experience, start to finish. And then I love to step back and look at that thing and just to feel great about it. But what's so funny is while I'm working on stuff, I notice that is when I have some of my clearest thoughts. So when I am doing something with my body, with my hands, when I'm engaged with something, ironically, my mind is less occupied on randomness or on problems or on anxieties or whatever. I'm just in this very clear place when I work on projects or when I paint or whatever. So I get annoyed with myself because then I'm like, okay, I can keep this thought to myself, or I can hit the record button and share it because it's a clear thought, and that's what I'm committed to. It's like a clear journal entry through this magic box, and I can just share my honest experience with people. And I was sort of imagining a conversation in my mind, or having a conversation with my mind, with almost anyone. And so just imagining having a conversation about a certain topic. And I notice that's sometimes how I work through certain subjects in my mind. We are running simulations in our mind. Like our mind, if you just cut all the dogma and all the bullshit out of your experience of it, we have this ability to run simulations, and we run simulations based on the data that we are open to. I think we have massive amounts of data available to us that we do not acknowledge because of our own fear, our own dogmas, our own beliefs, our own blind spots, our own denial, our own avoidance. It's amazing how much information people just flat out deny and do not tap into or utilize because of our coping strategies, because we don't want to look at our fear, our trauma, our sadness, our grief, our shame especially. And we just perpetuate all of these generational traumas because of it. We do it individually, we do it in families and communities and churches and schools, and we do it collectively. And where I'm going with that is that in this imaginary conversation, I was thinking about just how little we actually know each other as a human family, how many confusing things we are acting out, how many family squabbles we're having, how many wars we're having, how much suffering exists in the world because of our lack of ability to communicate. And because language and imagery and information is so frequently used to distort our reality. We've had our realities distorted over the course of shaping our childhood through our experiences. And we've also grown up in a cultural context that willfully and unconsciously, deliberately and unconsciously manipulates our perspective according to certain ideas and beliefs and rules and rituals and structures of power and agendas. And so our minds are so completely adapted to that landscape that we often don't know the difference between our awareness, our observing self, our natural observing unbiased, natural observing self, the awareness within that is having an experience. We have different words for it, different ideas for it, different history behind it, but we have this awareness that transcends our perceptions and our experiences. And it's amazing to me, reeling it back in, it's amazing to me how little we know each other, how distorted our perspectives are, how deeply rooted in and entrenched in our ideas and beliefs we are, and how easily those things are used to separate, divide, manipulate us, to just really to treat us as a source, right? As a supply. You could call it a sort of narcissistic supply, that we are, in general, looked upon as something to consume, something to use, something to abuse. We are abused when we are looked upon as objects in someone's story. It's when children are abused. It's when we are abused collectively as a society. Not by political parties specifically, not by entities of power specifically, not by any one individual or group. It's that we allow, through a lack of awareness, a lack of strength, a lack of healthy boundaries within, and it's because we've grown up in this environment, we're all acting out this collective learned helplessness. We allow ourselves to be used and abused by certain types of people and certain types of ideologies that people fall prey to. We allow ourselves to be used and abused and treated as a commodity and treated as an object in someone else's story. And within that, I was noticing my own internal experience. And I was imagining explaining my internal experience to someone, and how little of my internal experience I could actually use language to express to someone else. And it occurred to me how much of our internal experiences we are making vast assumptions about, and how little awareness a lot of people have about their internal experience. And in the moment, I see so many pathways I'd like to go down with that. But first, I just want to continue to explore that language is so limiting, and language is so easily abused and manipulated. The moment you speak, people are automatically reacting to the language that you use and to the body that is speaking that language, and to their own perception and experience of how your language and your story and the way you appear and the sounds you make out of your mouth. People are already reacting to those things according to their own stories, and how those stories are programmed into their bodies, into their muscles, into the gristle of the body. And most people are having, and this is what I observe through thousands of clients, through thousands of client hours, through just being a person who spent my life really observing within myself and observing others. And I believe doing so with a really open mind and a really curious mind, and a mind that is progressively willing to open up and let go and just observe my own thoughts, feelings, perceptions, experiences in this time and place. And I think most people are acting out the automatic sensations in the body that were written into code over the course of their lives. And those automatic sensations are related to very complex stories that are intertwined with language, sensation, the perception of safety, the perception of meaning, the perception of self within that context. And we act it out so automatically that how the hell are we ever supposed to see each other or hear each other or break these cultural spells that we have fallen prey to, and that allow us to just continue to be used and abused and manipulated, or allow our brothers and sisters, we observe them being used and abused and manipulated. And we've just been born and raised in so much learned helplessness that we just sit there and we watch it. We observe it. We watch it on our televisions. So language is limiting. My language is limiting. My ability to articulate my internal experience is limiting. And it occurred to me that so much of my internal experience is so far beyond what language can describe. I do my best through art. I do my best through language. I do my best through action, behavior, expression, all of that. But the internal awareness, the experience of awareness is so vast, it's so magnificent, it's so powerful, it's so energetic, and the language we use to describe it and how that language is received by others, and the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we tell collectively are just so automatically acted out, and it just seems to me that they're just so programmed. More than we imagine, I believe they're programmed. And we are just born and raised in this thing. And it doesn't have to be some big grandiose story. It doesn't have to be some Hollywood story. It doesn't have to be some allegory. Like, we don't need to put some sort of dogma on our story in order to understand the programming of it, the rules of it, the experience of it. We just need to recognize that we're living in a body that automatically learns from experience, and we are born and raised in an environment where we're automatically learning from the world around us. And depending upon the family we're born into and the community we're born into and the world that we live in, we are going to develop and our own unique awareness, our own unique lens, our own unique personality, our own unique soul interacts with this thing in a unique way. And pretty soon we're just automatically perceiving ourself in a story in this world. And we're looking at others who don't live in the same story we're living in, and we think they're crazy, we think they're stupid, we think they're wrong, we think they're part of the other, or they're part of the other, and they're to blame for our problems. And if only they would think the way we think, then the world would be okay. Like, it's unbelievable that people throw around this word narcissism, but we are living in a narcissistic story. We're creating a narcissistic story. Why? Because most people have a perception within themselves about the way the world should be for them and how they want other people to behave in that world. And they go about telling other people that they should think and feel and behave a certain way in that world, or else. That's inherently an authoritarian rooted system. It's an inherently narcissistically rooted system. When we say that the other, who is different than us, needs to behave in a certain way in order to align with how we want the world to be, or else. It's the or else part that makes it narcissistic, that makes it authoritarian, rather than this is how I think, this is how I feel, this is how I see the world, this is how I want to behave in the world, this is the world I want to create. But there's no or else attached to it. I'm not going to tell anyone else how they're supposed to behave within that thing. I'm just observing my experience and what I've learned from that experience and sharing my point of view. And that's where I develop my relationships from. That's how I do my private, my therapy work from. It's just how I interact with people in general. And I find that creates really great dialogue and really great connections and really great relationships, and it builds trust. Because inherently, I'm just really curious about other people, and I'm curious about how they see the world, and I'm curious about the language they're using to describe their experience. And I spend a lot of time walking next to people and helping them refine the language they're using to better understand for themselves what they're experiencing internally, and then to speak that truth consistently in their life and to allow their boundaries and their relationships and their experiences to flow from how they're articulating themselves in their world and how that makes its way into their actions and behaviors. And to continually allow the language to follow awareness rather than awareness to follow language. And I'm just so fascinated by that. And I'm so fascinated by my internal experience. I always have been. And I'm so fascinated that we're all walking around this planet and we barely know each other. So that's why I love art, and that's why I love language, and that's why I love communication, and that's why I think these magic boxes are amazing and can be an amazing tool. I'm literally recording my voice into this box, and I get to hit a button and it goes around the world potentially, depending upon who's listening. That's amazing. That's a miracle. That's something we take for granted. Have a wonderful day.